Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. So as you are all aware about the respiratory system which we had started, we are discussing about the respiration which involves the exchange of gases. So we have seen the pulmonary ventilation, which is one of the steps. Also we have covered the internal and the external respiration, which involves the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the lungs as well as in the tissues. So the ones which takes place in the lungs, it is known as the external respiration, and the one which takes place in the tissues, it is called as the internal respiration. Okay. So in today's video we shall discuss about the transport of the oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay. So we have seen that the process of external respiration, which is also known as the pulmonary gas exchange, it takes place in between the alveoli and the pulmonary capillaries, right. So gases from the alveoli and the blood in the pulmonary capillaries, they exchange, right. So oxygen is taken up. So this process of movement of these gases in the respective directions depends upon the partial pressure across the membrane, right. So we have seen, because of the differences in the partial pressure, the exchange of gases will take place. That is, oxygen will be taken up by the blood in the pulmonary capillaries and the carbon dioxide will be given out into the alveoli. And the internal respiration, it takes place at the tissue level. So it is also known as the systemic gas exchange, wherein depending upon the gradients of the partial pressure of the oxygen and carbon dioxide, the movement of oxygen takes place into the tissues and carbon dioxide moves out. Now these two processes take place at different levels, right. So blood, it carries these two gases in specific directions, right, for the loading and unloading of the specific type of gas. To allow these two types of gaseous exchange to take place at that respective place. So for these exchange of gases to take place at these respective places, these gases need to be carried by this blood, right. So whatever blood is present over here, it is carrying your oxygen and carbon dioxide, right. A specific level of oxygen and a specific level of carbon dioxide is maintained in the blood, which is traveling throughout the body. So in which form it is being carried, how it is carried, and how this gaseous exchange is allowed, in which form actually. So you need to understand the processes which are involved in transportation of these gases, in what form they are traveling throughout your body, from your tissues and from your tissues towards your lungs. What makes it possible? So you need to understand these different processes which are involved in the transportation of these gases. So these involve certain chemical reactions which occur the change in form of these gases, because of which it makes it possible to transport these gases. So unless and until these gases are transported across these areas, gaseous exchange will not take place, right. Okay. So these processes, the process of gaseous exchange, it is aided by the transport of these gases throughout the body. So, this will involve certain chemical reactions. So, we will talk about these two gases, oxygen transport and the carbon dioxide transport. So, we will see how exactly the oxygen is transported in the body and in what form the carbon dioxide is transported in the body. Okay, so, let us talk about the oxygen transport. Okay, so remember the factors when we were discussing the exchange of gases, the partial pressure of the gas, that is very important, the area, the surface area across which the exchange take place, then the thickness of the membrane across which it has to diffuse, and the last factor which was about the solubility, right? Solubility of a particular gas in the blood. So, that is also an important factor, right? So, over there we were discussing about the solubility of these two gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide. So, you have seen that the carbon dioxide, it is 24 times more soluble in the blood as compared to the oxygen. So, it is more soluble as compared to the oxygen, but still certain amount of oxygen can dissolve in the blood. Okay. So, it actually does not dissolve in the water very easily, its solubility is very less. So, out of whatever 100% of the oxygen is taken up by the blood, a very small amount of it will travel in the dissolved form, that is only 1.5% of the inhaled oxygen, it is dissolved in the blood plasma, that too in the water component of the plasma. Remember the composition of the blood plasma, it comprises of water, right. So, oxygen can dissolve in this water component of the blood plasma, but a very small amount of it can dissolve. So, how does most of the oxygen gets transported? That is 98.5% of the oxygen which is present in the blood, it is carried in the form of binding to the hemoglobin which is present in your RBCs. If you can recall your cardiovascular system, your blood comprises of certain formed elements, one of them is the RBCs, right, RBCs, WBCs, there are platelets also. Okay, so, within RBCs is present the hemoglobin. So, it is packed with hemoglobin, right. So, this hemoglobin, it has certain chains, right, it is actually a protein which has two components, heme and the globin. Okay. So, this particular portion, it has the iron which is present in it, right, which is capable of binding to the oxygen, isn't it? If you can recall the functions of the RBCs, it is mainly to transport the oxygen. So, that totally depends upon your hemoglobin content. Okay, so, if your hemoglobin content is low, your oxygen carrying capacity will also be low. That means you are suffering from a condition known as anemia. Okay, so this is a very important component which is responsible for transportation of the oxygen. So 98.5% of the oxygen will be carried into the blood in the bound form to this particular protein called as hemoglobin, which is present within the RBCs. Okay, so each 100 ml of your oxygenated blood is the one which has taken up the oxygen from the alveoli. So this contains an equivalent of 20 ml of the gaseous oxygen. So if you can convert it to these percentages, round about 0.3 ml out of this 20 ml is transported in the dissolved form, whereas the remaining 19.7 ml of the oxygen, it is transported in the bound form to your hemoglobin. Okay, so these are the two main transportation methods for the oxygen. Okay, so that's the very important one, binding to the hemoglobin. So heme portion, if you all can recall the structure of the hemoglobin, it comprises of the 4 atoms of iron, Fe. So each atom of iron is capable of binding to one molecule of the oxygen. So how many oxygen molecules can be carried by each molecule of hemoglobin? Yes, it can carry 4 molecules of oxygen. Okay, so oxygen binds with this hemoglobin. It's in the reduced form, right? Reduced hemoglobin, or it is also known as deoxyhemoglobin. It is devoid of oxygen, right? Or it is reduced. Your iron is in the reduced form, Fe+2. So it gets oxidized, right? Once it binds to your oxygen, it gets converted to Fe+3. Due to this process of oxidation, because your oxygen is binding to your hemoglobin, right? So it binds very easily with this hemoglobin, and this particular process is a reversible one. As you can see over here, arrow is shown in both the directions. That means what? The hemoglobin can easily bind with the oxygen to get converted into oxyhemoglobin. So deoxyhemoglobin gets converted to oxyhemoglobin, because here now oxygen is bound to this hemoglobin. And at the same time, this particular bound oxygen can easily get dissociated from this hemoglobin, because whatever oxygen is being carried towards your tissues, it needs to be released to the tissues, right? It should be available in the free form for it to be taken up by the tissues, right? So it's a reversible process. So in the tissues, reverse reaction will take place. That is, this oxygen will split to release your hemoglobin and the oxygen. So hemoglobin will get converted back to its reduced form, so that it is ready to take up the new molecules of the oxygen. Okay. So in this particular form, what you can conclude, the 98.5% of the oxygen which is remaining bound to your hemoglobin, where is it present now? What is the structure? If you can recall the structure of the RBC, yes, it is dumbbell shaped, right? It is flattened and it is dumbbell shaped, the cross section of it. Okay, so this oxygen which has entered now, this is your alveoli. So you are inhaling the oxygen. So oxygen from the alveolus, it will enter into the interstitial fluid. From here it will cross the pulmonary capillary wall and it will enter your blood. This is your blood. This is a plasma, right? So that's your blood. So now the oxygen has diffused into the blood. But what about the solubility? It is very, very low, right? So how much amount will remain over here in the dissolved form in the blood? It's just 1.5%. But remaining amount has entered the RBCs, right? The remaining 98.5%. It has quickly entered your RBCs. So here it will encounter the reduced hemoglobin and it will get converted to the oxyhemoglobin and release the H+. So once it reaches the tissues, once it reaches the tissue capillaries, what will happen? This particular gradients are reversed, right? This is your tissue wherein the oxygen level, it is low, right? The partial pressure of oxygen is very, very low over here. So what will happen? The gradients are in the reverse direction now. So whatever oxygen is present over here in the plasma, it will quickly get diffused out, right? So as it diffuses out, what will happen? There is a gradient which is available in this direction, right? So whatever oxygen is bound over here to your hemoglobin, that will easily get dissociated to release the hemoglobin and the oxygen. So this oxygen, it will diffuse out of the RBCs and from here it will enter into the tissue cells. Okay, so this particular binding of oxygen and release of oxygen from the hemoglobin, it takes place very easily. Okay, so this particular picture, it depicts the transportation of the oxygen. Okay, 1.5% it is in the dissolved form and remaining 98.5% it is trapped inside the RBCs in the form of oxyhemoglobin. So from here it will travel towards your heart, heart will pump it to the entire body. So the dissolved oxygen is the one which can diffuse, right? Directly from here it will not diffuse out. First it has to diffuse into the blood so that the bound form is released and it will diffuse back into the blood and from here it will enter into the tissues. Okay. Now since this particular transport of oxygen and the exchange of gases, it totally depends upon the binding and dissociation of the oxygen to your hemoglobin. That's very important, right? Because majority of it is carried in the bound form to your hemoglobin, right? So you need to understand certain factors which promote binding of oxygen or dissociation of the oxygen from the hemoglobin. It's very important to understand these factors. Why this binding of oxygen to the hemoglobin takes place at the pulmonary capillaries and why the dissociation takes place in the systemic capillaries, why it happens. So for that matter you need to understand these few factors which are affecting binding of oxygen to the hemoglobin or dissociation of the oxygen from the hemoglobin. So first and a very important factor is the partial pressure of the oxygen. That's very important. So what is the relationship between this hemoglobin and the partial pressure of the oxygen? How the change in partial pressure of oxygen changes the binding of the oxygen to your hemoglobin. That's very important, most important factor. Apart from that, there are several factors which affect the affinity of the hemoglobin for your oxygen? With what affinity, with what tendency the oxygen can bind to your hemoglobin? So, these factors include the acidity or the pH, lower pH indicates acidic pH, right? Okay. Then next factor is the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide, then temperature and BPG, that is 2,3-bisphosphoglycerate. Okay, so let us consider the first factor. What is the relationship between this hemoglobin and partial pressure of the oxygen? How it changes the saturation of the hemoglobin as the partial pressure of oxygen is changing. So, that is the most important factor, as I have told you. Most important factor which will determine how much of oxygen binds to your hemoglobin. So, that is the partial pressure of oxygen. Higher the partial pressure of your oxygen, more oxygen will combine with your hemoglobin, which is denoted by Hb. Okay. So, when do you call that a particular hemoglobin is fully saturated? There is something called saturation now. You should understand what is the term saturation means. So, that will be determined by the number of oxygen molecules which are binding to the hemoglobin. So, when this reduced hemoglobin, that is Hb, it is completely converted to oxyhemoglobin. So, entire amount of hemoglobin which is present, if it gets converted into the oxyhemoglobin, so you can say that the hemoglobin is fully saturated. But if the hemoglobin, it comprises of a mixture of Hb, reduced hemoglobin, which is not bound to oxygen or partially bound to the oxygen, and the oxyhemoglobin. So, then you can say that the hemoglobin is partially saturated. So, we will talk about how the partial pressure of oxygen, it alters the saturation of the hemoglobin. So, the percent saturation, we will be talking about the percent saturation of the hemoglobin. This is the one. So, this expresses the average saturation of the hemoglobin with the oxygen. Say for example, if a molecule of hemoglobin, it is bound to only 2 molecules of oxygen. How many molecules it can bind to? Actually, one hemoglobin molecule, it can bind to 4 oxygens, right? Now, supposing if this hemoglobin molecule has bound only to 2 oxygen molecules. So, what you can say about the saturation level of this hemoglobin? It is only 50% saturated. Because actually it can bind to 4 molecules of oxygen, right? But this one has bound only to 2 oxygen, that means it is 50% saturated. Okay, so likewise, if you take into account all the hemoglobin which is present in your blood, all the hemoglobin may not be saturated, fully saturated. All the hemoglobin molecules, you will have a number of Hb molecules which are present over here, right, in your blood, number of Hb molecules. So, all may not be bound to 4 molecules, maybe this one is bound to only 2, maybe this one has only bound to 2, this one is bound to 4. So, this collective saturation of all the hemoglobin taken together, that is expressed in terms of percentage saturation of hemoglobin. How much saturation of hemoglobin has taken place. So, this will in turn depend upon the partial pressure of your oxygen. As you can see, it is denoted on the x-axis. So, this plot will make you understand better how the change in partial pressure of oxygen changes the percent saturation of the hemoglobin. So, as you can see over here, as the partial pressure of oxygen increases, it is 100 in the blood, right? In the oxygenated blood, it is 100 mmHg. So, as you can see that as the partial pressure of your oxygen is increasing, what is happening to your saturation of hemoglobin? That is going on increasing, right? So, higher the partial pressure of oxygen, greater will be the saturation of your hemoglobin with oxygen. So, a more number of hemoglobin will bind to all the 4 molecules of oxygen, that is they are 100% saturated. So, as you can see over here, there is 100% saturation, right, because here the partial pressure of oxygen is very high. So, in this region, as you can see at these levels, the saturation of hemoglobin is 100%, that is all the hemoglobins have occupied all the 4 oxygen molecules. On the contrary, when partial pressure of oxygen is low, hemoglobin is only partially saturated. Okay, so here as you can see over here, at the partial pressure of 40 mmHg, as what happens in the tissues. So, what is the saturation level? It is just 75%. Okay. So, as a result of this, the pulmonary capillaries, wherein the partial pressure of oxygen is very high, a lot of oxygen will bind to the hemoglobin. So, that is why the saturation is very, very high. Whereas, in case of the tissue capillaries, where the partial pressure of oxygen is low, the hemoglobin is not able to hold much of the oxygen. So, whatever is bound to your hemoglobin, that will be released into the blood, and via diffusion it will start entering into your tissue cells. However, although the unloading has taken place, however, your hemoglobin is still 75% saturated with oxygen, even at the low partial pressures of your oxygen. If you can recall, in the exchange of gases, we have seen that tissues utilize only the 25% of the oxygen, right, which is present in your blood in a resting person. Of course, when your tissues are exercising, they will take up more oxygen, but still in the deoxygenated blood, your hemoglobin is still 75% saturated with the oxygen. Here at 40 mmHg, still 75% of saturation is present, right. So, quite a good amount of oxygen still bound to your hemoglobin. Okay. So, from this curve, what you can conclude, that at the partial pressures in between 60 and 100, you can see that the saturation of your hemoglobin is above 90%, 90% or more. Okay. However, as the partial pressure of oxygen goes low, say for example 20 mmHg, what has happened to your saturation? Almost it has gone down to 35%, and in between 40 and 20 mmHg, a large amount of oxygen is released from the hemoglobin. Due to the decrease in the partial pressure of oxygen, more and more oxygen will get dissociated from your hemoglobin and it will be released out. So, in the active tissues wherein the partial pressure may be even below 40 mmHg, a more amount of oxygen is released from the hemoglobin. That is the reason why more amount of oxygen is getting released from the hemoglobin. So, it totally depends upon the environment, how much of oxygen, partial pressure of the oxygen is present in the vicinity. So, that will determine whether the oxygen will remain in the bound form to your hemoglobin or whether it will be released out. So, that is a very important factor. Apart from this, there are other factors which will determine the affinity of the hemoglobin for your oxygen. Affinity means the tightness with which it is binding to the oxygen. So, as a result of these, the entire curve will get shifted either to the left hand side or to the right hand side. So, if it shifts towards the left hand side, it indicates that the hemoglobin will have higher affinity for the oxygen. So, the oxygen will not be released very quickly. Whereas, if the curve gets shifted to the right hand side, it indicates that it has lower affinity. So, oxygen will be released very easily. So, coming to the first factor, that is the acidity or the pH. So, the pH of the blood, the normal pH, it is 7.4. Now, supposing if the pH decreases, so what does it indicate? Low pH, it indicates increase in the acidity, right? So, at the lower pH or at the acidic pH, so as the acidity increases or as the pH decreases of your blood, the affinity of the hemoglobin for oxygen, it decreases. So, as a result of this, what will happen? More and more oxygen will get dissociated from the hemoglobin. So, dissociation becomes easy. Now, what did I tell you? When the curve gets shifted towards the right hand side, it indicates what? It has low affinity, right? So, now as you can see that the pH has decreased, right? Normally it is 7.4. Now, it has moved towards the acidic side, that is 7.2. So, what has happened? Curve has shifted towards the right hand side. So, what will happen to your oxygen which is bound to hemoglobin? Its affinity will decrease and more oxygen will be released. On the contrary, what will happen if the pH is increased? If it is going towards alkaline side, acidity is decreasing, right? It is becoming 7.6. So, what will happen? The curve has shifted now to the left hand side. What does it indicate? It indicates that the hemoglobin has high affinity for the oxygen. So, release of oxygen will be decreased at the higher pH. So, you can see the saturation level. It becomes very clear from this particular picture. So, when the partial pressure of oxygen remains constant, that is 30, as you change the pH, see the changes in the saturation. So at the normal pH, it is around about say 48 or something like that. Correct? But as the pH is reduced, what has happened to the saturation? Maybe it has gone down to 37 roughly. What does this mean? The saturation has reduced. What does this mean? What do you mean by saturation? Amount of oxygen which is bound to your hemoglobin, right? So as you decrease the pH, what has happened to your saturation level? It has decreased from 48, it has come down to 37%. So that means what? Less amount of oxygen is now bound to your hemoglobin. That means what? Affinity for the oxygen of your hemoglobin has reduced. That is why it has released the oxygen. That's why the saturation has decreased from 48 to 37. On the other hand, if the pH increase, what has happened? The saturation has increased from 48 to 65. What does that mean? Now here there is more saturation of your hemoglobin with the oxygen. That means what? The affinity has increased. So less of oxygen is released now, is getting released. Okay. So acidity again is a very important factor which will determine the dissociation of the oxygen from the hemoglobin. So unless and until the hemoglobin releases its oxygen, the exchange of gases will not take place. Okay, so this is again one more important factor for the release of oxygen. So metabolically, the acids which are produced in the body, in the tissues, are lactic acid and carbonic acid. So these will promote the release of the oxygen which is bound to your hemoglobin. So more the acids which are generated in the tissues, pH will be lowered. So it will promote the dissociation of the hemoglobin. So when this pH decreases, the hemoglobin dissociation curve, this is the one. So it gets shifted towards the right hand side. So it has shifted towards the right hand side, right? At a particular partial pressure of oxygen, less saturation of the hemoglobin will take place with oxygen. So this particular change, it is known as the Bohr's effect or Bohr effect. Decrease in the pH or increase in the acidity, it decreases the saturation of the hemoglobin with oxygen. This is known as the Bohr effect. Then the second factor which is affecting the affinity is the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide. So this will also determine the saturation of the hemoglobin with oxygen, because even carbon dioxide can also bind with this hemoglobin. We will come to this shortly as we will discuss about the transportation of the carbon dioxide. So this is also able to bind to the hemoglobin. It is not only the oxygen, but the carbon dioxide can also bind to your hemoglobin. So this particular effect is much similar to that of the H+, that is the acidity. We have seen that increase in the acidity shifts the curve towards right hand side, right? So similarly, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide rises, it will start releasing the oxygen from the hemoglobin. So more and more oxygen will be released from the hemoglobin. Okay, so as you can see that this is the curve at the normal blood partial pressure of the carbon dioxide. But what has happened, as the partial pressure of carbon dioxide has increased, the curve has shifted towards right hand side, right? So what has happened? Because of increase in the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide, the saturation level has decreased. So more and more oxygen will be released from the hemoglobin. So both these factors are related to each other. Now why is it so? That's because as the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high, more and more will enter into the RBC and it will encounter the water, and in presence of the enzyme carbonic anhydrase, this carbon dioxide will get converted into carbonic acid. This in turn easily dissociates into the hydrogen ion and the bicarbonate ion. So what has happened now? Due to high level of the carbon dioxide, what has happened to your H plus ion concentration? That has increased. Increase in the H plus ion, what does it indicate? Acidity, right? So acidity has increased. So what we have seen under the first factor, increase in the acidity, it decreases the affinity of your HB for the oxygen, right? So same will be the consequence, right? Shift in the curve towards the right hand side. Okay, and the next factor is the temperature, the third factor. So within the limits, as you increase the temperature, it will promote the release of the oxygen from the hemoglobin. So heat is a byproduct of the metabolic reactions in these cells, as you all are aware of. Heat is produced as the muscle fibers are working, body temperature, it raises a little bit. So these metabolically active cells, they require more and more oxygen, right? So whatever heat is getting generated over here, so it aids in release of more and more oxygen from the oxyhemoglobin. So whatever is bound to the hemoglobin, it will be released out. And the last factor is the BPG, that is 2,3-bisphosphoglycerate. So this is a substance which is actually generated in the RBCs, because RBCs, they break down the glucose to produce its own ATP. So by the process of glycolysis, it generates the ATP. So during this particular process is generated this particular BPG. So this BPG, it combines with the hemoglobin, the terminal amino groups of these hemoglobin. So as a result of this, the hemoglobin binds less tightly with the oxygen. So it decreases the affinity of your hemoglobin towards the oxygen. More the amount of BPG, lesser will be the binding tendency of your hemoglobin towards your oxygen. The carbon dioxide transport. So we have seen that oxygen is transported by only two ways, that is very less amount is dissolved, that is 1.5%, and the 98.5% is actually carried in the bound form with the hemoglobin, that is oxyhemoglobin. Now, coming to the carbon dioxide. So under normal resting conditions, each 100 ml of the deoxygenated blood, it will contain 53 ml of gaseous carbon dioxide. Quite a lot amount of carbon dioxide as compared to oxygen, right? Okay. So this carbon dioxide, it is transported in three main forms. First, dissolved carbon dioxide, it has more solubility. So obviously more amount of carbon dioxide will be found dissolved in the blood as compared to oxygen. Second method is by formation of carbamino compounds, and the third one is in the form of bicarbonate ions. So, let us talk about the first method, that is the dissolved carbon dioxide. So, here if you compare the three methods by which the carbon dioxide is transported, this is the smallest percent, but it is quite a lot when you compare it with oxygen, right. That is because the solubility of the carbon dioxide is high, correct. So, about 7% of the total carbon dioxide, it is carried in the form of dissolved carbon dioxide in the blood plasma. Okay. So, whatever carbon dioxide is produced by the tissue cells, it moves towards the interstitial fluid and it will then diffuse into the blood plasma. So, 7% will remain dissolved in the blood plasma. Now, upon reaching the lungs, when this deoxygenated blood is carried towards your lungs, so whatever dissolved carbon dioxide is present in your blood plasma, that can get diffused into your alveoli, and from here it will be exhaled out. Okay, so it is only the dissolved form of the carbon dioxide which can diffuse out. Okay. Then the second form in which the carbon dioxide is carried, that is round about 23% of the carbon dioxide, it is transported in the form of carbamino compounds. So, how these are formed? By combination of carbon dioxide with the amino groups of the amino acids which are present in the proteins. And the most prevalent protein of the blood is hemoglobin, which is present inside the RBCs, to which the oxygen also binds. So, this is the most important protein to which your carbon dioxide will bind to. So, this 23% of the carbon dioxide is transported in the bound form with your hemoglobin. So, it will bind to the terminal amino acids of the 2 alpha and the 2 beta globin chains. Okay, so, carbon dioxide, it will bind with the hemoglobin to form a compound called as carbaminohemoglobin. Just like oxygen, when it binds to the hemoglobin, it is known as oxyhemoglobin. Similarly, over here, when carbon dioxide combines with the hemoglobin, it is known as carbaminohemoglobin, HbCO2. Okay. So, this carbon dioxide which has entered into your blood, 23% of it will enter inside the RBC and it can bind to the hemoglobin. So, it will get converted to carbaminohemoglobin. Okay. So, this formation of the carbaminohemoglobin, so that will depend upon the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide. So, in case of tissue capillaries, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is relatively high, right. So, this will promote the formation of more and more carbaminohemoglobin. But what is the situation in the pulmonary capillaries? The partial pressure of your carbon dioxide is relatively low, right, in this region. So, what will happen? It will promote the splitting of the carbon dioxide from the hemoglobin. So, the bound carbon dioxide, it will be released from the hemoglobin and it will diffuse out into the blood. From here it will enter into your alveoli. So, reverse process will take place in the pulmonary capillaries. Okay. Then the third form in which the carbon dioxide travels is the bicarbonate ions. So, the greatest percentage of carbon dioxide, that is 70%, we have seen 7% is dissolved in the blood, 23% is transported in the form of carbaminohemoglobin, the remaining 70% it is transported in the form of bicarbonate ions. Okay, so whatever carbon dioxide it diffuses into your systemic capillaries, they will enter into the RBCs. So, over here it can react with the water, and in presence of this enzyme, if you can recall, few slides back we had come across this particular same reaction. So, in presence of this enzyme carbonic anhydrase, carbon dioxide combines with water to form carbonic acid, which can easily get dissociated into hydrogen ion and bicarbonate. So, your carbon dioxide has now got incorporated into this bicarbonate ion, right. So, here the carbon dioxide which diffuses into your RBCs combines with water in presence of carbonic anhydrase, gets converted to carbonic acid, which splits into bicarbonate and H plus ion. So, this bicarbonate in turn will diffuse out of the RBCs and it will travel in the form of bicarbonate in the blood plasma. Okay. So, as a result of this, what will happen? As more and more carbon dioxide enters your blood, what will happen? More and more bicarbonate will start accumulating in your RBCs. So, this bicarbonate will move out in the blood plasma. Why it is moving? Down its concentration gradient. So, there is a concentration gradient, there is a very less amount of bicarbonate over here. So, whatever bicarbonate is formed in the RBCs, it is moving out of the RBCs. Now, one negative charge is moving out, right. So, to balance this, one more transport is taking place, right. The chloride ion which is present in your plasma, that has started entering your RBCs. So, this particular process of exchange of a negative charge to maintain the electrical balance between your blood plasma and the RBCs, this particular process is known as chloride shift. Okay. So, what is the net effect of this particular reactions? Is removal of this carbon dioxide out of the tissues. So, from here it will enter into your RBCs, it will get converted into the bicarbonate and then it will come back to your plasma and it will travel in the form of bicarbonate. Now, as your blood reaches your pulmonary capillaries now your carbon dioxide is travelling in the form of bicarbonate, right. This is your carbon dioxide now, whatever is picked up from your tissues. Now, as this blood which is carrying the carbon dioxide in the form of bicarbonate, as it reaches your pulmonary capillaries, all the reactions which have taken place, they have reversed now. As you can see, bicarbonate has entered your RBC. So, it will recombine with H plus ions, form the carbonic acid. Carbonic acid in the presence of enzyme carbonic anhydrase, it will dissociate into carbon dioxide and water, and this carbon dioxide has now diffused out of your RBC. From here it will enter into your alveoli and it is exhaled out. So, all the reactions have taken place in the reverse direction. So as this bicarbonate is entering your RBC, what will happen to your chloride ion? Again, to balance this electrical gradient, movement of chloride will take place from the RBCs into your plasma. So a reverse chloride shift is taking place now over here. So all the reactions have reversed to move the carbon dioxide out into the alveoli. Okay, so whatever dissolved carbon dioxide, that will move out. Whatever carbon dioxide has bound to your HB, that will be split and move out, and whatever is travelling in the form of bicarbonate, that will also travel back and it will diffuse. So this is how the carbon dioxide is transported and it is released out into the alveoli. This is why the exchange of gases will take place. So it will aid in exchange of gases to take place. Now the amount of carbon dioxide which can be transported in the blood, so this will be determined by certain factors. So it will determine by the percent saturation of the hemoglobin with the oxygen. So lower the amount of oxyhemoglobin, higher will be the carbon dioxide carrying capacity of your blood, right? So more and more hemoglobin will be available for the transportation of the carbon dioxide. So this particular relationship is known as the Haldane effect. So the two characteristics of this deoxyhemoglobin. Deoxyhemoglobin is the one which is lacking the oxygen, bound oxygen, right? So this deoxyhemoglobin, it binds to and transports more carbon dioxide as compared to your oxyhemoglobin. So if it is already bound to oxygen, it cannot transport the carbon dioxide, right? So it's the deoxyhemoglobin which can bind to your carbon dioxide and travel it. So also this deoxyhemoglobin, it buffers more and more H plus. So by promoting the removal of H plus, so it promotes the conversion of the carbon dioxide to bicarbonate. So this is the main form in which your carbon dioxide is travelling, right? So it is promoting the transportation of the carbon dioxide. So this is the summary of the transportation of the carbon dioxide. As we have seen, 7% is dissolved in the plasma, 23% it is bound to your hemoglobin, carbaminohemoglobin, and the 70% is travelling in the form of bicarbonate. So it will travel towards your pulmonary capillaries, and here the release of carbon dioxide will take place into the alveoli. Okay. So this is to do with the transportation of the oxygen and carbon dioxide. So oxygen gets transported in two forms, that is 1.5% in the dissolved form, and the 98.5% is bound to your hemoglobin in the form of oxyhemoglobin, whereas the carbon dioxide, it travels in three forms. 7% of it is in the dissolved form, since its solubility in the blood is high. 23% will be bound to the hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin, and the 70% of the carbon dioxide is getting transported in the form of bicarbonate through several reactions. Okay. So this is the reference for my presentation. Thank you for watching.